hope we sometimes run a little late and everything, but I think I mostly know everyone here. My name's Don, and I'm with the Chamber, Executive Director at the Chamber of Commerce, Don McCoy. Well, and since we have kind of a smallish crowd, I'd like for each of you to stand up, say who you are, name of your company, maybe just a quick one brief line about you, because this is also sort of a networking opportunity. And we find that our How to Win Wednesday classes, sometimes they're bigger, depending on what the topic is, but we all like to use each other's business to refer each other as well. So it's always nice to put a face with a name. So we'll start right here. Please stand up.
Okay.
Tell us who you are.
So hello, my name's Todd Neely, owner of Temperature Pro heating and air conditioning company here in Fort Bend County. Is really our focus. So all things heating, air conditioning, air quality is a big one that we focus on. Both residential and I say light commercial, but for the most part commercial, and we even do restaurants as well. So
Excellent.
Hi, I'm David Johnson, owner of Serpro of West Fort Bend County. We're a fire and water cleanup and restoration company. Clean up after busted pipes, floods, fires, smoke damage, suicide, so forth.
David is a charter member of the chamber. He was one of the first businesses to be a member of our chamber, and we appreciate your continued support and everything we do. Thank you.
One of the original 300.
Really? Yep, the old 300. That's right.
My name is Brad Duffy. I'm the owner of the Alternative Board here in Southwest Houston. It's basically a peer advisory board for business owners. We do some strategic planning, executive coaching with each member as well. In fact, Mark is one of the members of my board. He's a guest with us today, so I want to let you introduce yourself.
Yeah.
And tell you a little about him.
Please, Mark.
Hey, Brett. My name's Mark Bachman, the owner and founder of The Dinner Dude. We make great tasting, individually prepared meals, support you, maintain your healthy lifestyle, deliver all over the Houston area, almost Fulshear, almost to Fulshear. But we do deliver out to Katy, to most of Katy, Sugar Land, League City.
Well, you have piqued my Dinner Dude.
The Dinner Dude. Look us up, dinnerdude.com. It's easy to remember.
Well, I live in Cinco Ranch, over by the Cinco Ranch High School. Do you live there?
I believe we do.
Because I just started the Iron Tribe working out, and I'm not supposed to eat that pizza.
We make paleo style meals.
That's exactly where we're going. So, get with me after this. I could probably open up an entire new market out here and make it worth your while to bring out here to Fulshear.
Well, let's talk.
But you got to join the chamber. Right, Gabe?
Right.
That's right.
Stick to your message, Don.
We're going to start right here. Please, Elena.
I'm Elena Hide. I'm president of Glamox Aquasignal Corporation, Norwegian-owned company. We are in offshore lighting. Any light that goes from Canada to oil company.
All the lights you see out on the ocean. It's her.
I'm Pam McGee. I'm the business manager with Parkway Fellowship. And if you don't know where we're located, we're at the other church up 359, right at the corner of 359 and FM 1093. And we are in the process of saving souls for Jesus. So when they commit suicide for this gentleman, we pray for them. That's exactly what we do. But I would love to have your card too, because I'm with Don. Hey, you deliver out here. You got 2 customers already, right, Don?
Yeah, we can hook you up.
There you go.
And we really appreciate Pam and Parkway Fellowship. That's where we have our chamber meetings every second Wednesday of every month. So if you haven't been in a while, I suggest you come. We had 110 people there this morning. It was very fun and entertaining, I think, wasn't it? It was cool prizes. Yes, sir. Please stand up.
I'm Rick Alaniz. I work with Shannon, and I thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I also had the opportunity or misfortune to use one of your Service Pro franchises about 2 months ago when our house flooded. But they did an outstanding job.
Well, that's good. And that's terrible. I had the misfortune of coming and using it. That's just. I mean,
we don't wish it on anybody, but if it happens, we won't be able to help.
They did a fabulous job.
That's awesome. It's like good results, and that's what's all important. And back here is Daniel McJunkin. I'll let him just speak for himself.
I'm Dan McJunkin. I publish Fulshear magazine. I do Fulshear.com, and today I'm here videoing to make sure that the word gets out. Shannon's message is known to chamber members as well as the rest of the community.
So anything you miss here, you can certainly go to Fulshear.com and rewatch this again if you need to, or share it with other people in the chamber or your friends. Andrew Van Chow the committee chair for our How to Win Wednesday and has really helped us grow this, and we won that award for International Association of Business Communicators, easy to say. And I'm going to turn it over to him. I'm going to sit over here and be quiet now, and we thank you all for being part of the Chamber and being here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And on behalf of the Chamber's Programs Committee, we're always looking for programs like this or from other business owners who want to share about either issues that are upcoming or learnings that businesses that our members could benefit from. We certainly look forward to hearing from you, and let us know about if you'd like to book an upcoming session. For today, it's my pleasure to introduce Shannon Gatlin. And Shannon is with it, joining us from Alanese, Schrader, Linker, Ferris, and Mays, right? Very good. And his focus is on labor law, and particularly changes that the Department of Labor is bringing forward that has to do with overtime, pay, and salaries, and changes that are coming into effect in December. So rather than take away any of the thunder, I'm turning it over to you. So Shannon, please take over.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Don and Andrew for the opportunity to come out here and speak to you guys today. What I'm going to be talking about is basically the minimum that you can pay a salaried employee is changing dramatically. And so I just want to give you guys a little bit of information on not only the basics of the changes, which take effect December 1st, but also some of the strategies that you might be able to apply depending on what type of business model you have and what type of duties your employees perform that could best help you adjust to what is a new reality, basically. I am here from Alanese Schrader. We do labor and employment. That's all we do. We've been doing it for a very long time. I personally have been there 7 years. My partner, Rick Alanese, who founded the firm, he's been doing this for 40 years. So he is a brilliant attorney and has probably forgotten more employment law than I will ever learn in my life. So I'm thrilled to have him here to assist with any questions and answers at the end. And I'd ask you to please hold your Q&A to the end. Just a little bit of background about why I am interested in helping out Fulshear Chamber members and why I am proud to say that our firm is a Fulshear Chamber member. I grew up in rural West Tennessee, and my parents, for most of my youth, owned and operated their own mom and pop sporting goods business. So I know from growing up, literally, in a small business, the trials and tribulations that small business owners can deal with. Now, this was back in the 80s and 90s. It was a much different world. It's just gotten more and more difficult for small business owners and large business owners. And so I really feel an obligation, not just to paying clients of our firm, but also just to help businesses in general deal with all of the regulations that get thrown at them. Now you should all have just a minute. So I lost my cursor here. There we go. Everyone, if you didn't already get a copy of the materials at the back, I went to the liberty of creating copies of these PowerPoint slides with notes or space for notes below. At the back of the packet, there is also a one-page survey that I've asked each of you to fill out. It just asks a few general questions about the size of your business and what you come into this presentation already knowing about the overtime law. One of the big things that the Department of Labor is harping on is how they've done a magnificent job of making sure that they promoted these changes and listened to feedback on those changes and adjusted adequately to address concerns of employers. All of that is hogwash, and I'll explain part of why that is. But if you don't mind just taking a couple of minutes to fill out that survey and leave it, it it would greatly help us in tailoring this presentation for future employers. Just so you know, this presentation is also being given by one of my colleagues, or a couple of my colleagues, or a similar version of this presentation throughout the state of Texas to various groups of employers. So it really is kind of a big deal, and that's why I'm here today. Now, over the course of the current administration, the amount of regulation that employers have had to deal with has grown exponentially, and the problems that employers have faced have grown exponentially. I'm not going to go through all of these because, as I said, you've got copies, but the one of these that is really pertinent today and what I would like to focus on is that last one. The Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division increased their litigation actions this past year by 10%. The DOL's Wage and Hour Division is the division of the federal government that enforces the Fair Labor Standards Act, that enforces the rules that we're going to be talking about today. So they are looking to come after employers actively, and that's not going to change, barring a major change in administration and Congress. So how much money are we talking about here? Well, it depends on the size of your company. Some examples: Halliburton last year, they had 1,000 employees that they were found to have not paid properly. That cost them $18 grand per employee, just about, so $18 million. Walmart, which granted they are huge, but in 2007 they got hit for $33.5 million. Just in 2013, which is some of the most recent numbers we have, on average, employers would have to pay about $4.5 million to settle these wage and hour enforcement actions. But the thing that really is pertinent to employers of every size is that last one. 3 out of every 4 low-wage workers, and by low-wage workers, that typically looks at entry-level workers, tipped employees, a lot of people in the retail industry. 3 out of 4 of those workers were not paid proper overtime under the law because the laws are so intricate, and also because some of those people were just classified improperly. They were classified as salaried when under the law they're not actually salaried, or they were classified as independent contractors when they're not actually independent contractors. It's those issues in addition to the salary minimum that the DOL looks at. The FLSA, just to give you a brief overview, this is pretty self-explanatory, but basically it is the law, the federal law, that establishes what the overtime rules are, what the salary rules are. It outlaws child labor. It's all of those things. And it applies based on a work week, not necessarily Sunday through Saturday, but you have some flexibility in determining what your work week is. Now, who does the FLSA cover? Well, the FLSA looks at coverage in 2 different ways. One is by looking at the overall company or enterprise itself. For your entire enterprise to be covered, there are a few limits. The main one is if you annually do a volume of $500,000 in sales and you have at least 2 employees, your entire company is covered. There are also some automatic covers. Hospitals, private schools, nursing homes, those are all going to be automatically covered regardless of how much you do in sales. Nonprofits are a little bit different animal. This is somewhat misleading in saying that nonprofits are not covered unless they have a gift shop or something like that that makes $500,000 a year. Just because the nonprofit itself is not covered in full, that doesn't take you out of the picture, because of that second major bullet, which is individuals. If you, as a company, are not covered, but you have certain salaried employees or employees that fit these qualifications, they are covered by the FLSA, and you still have to comply with it. This is based on the nature of the work, and the key point here and the key phrase is engaged in interstate commerce. Interstate commerce is very, very broadly applied by the Federal Labor Standards Act. It basically involves the movement of anything across state lines. So let's say, for example, you have a small, well, we'll use my parents' mom and pop sporting goods business as an example. They only had one location in Tennessee. It was just family operated, but we did have another one or two employees that were not family members. Well, were we engaged in interstate commerce? We only had that one location. You bet we were, because the vast majority of things that we sold were shipped to us from out of state. We accepted credit card payments. Those go on phone lines that go out of state, or back then, phone lines. We made long distance phone calls out of state to order products. That is all it takes. So if you've got somebody that does that regularly, and most people, most companies have that, that person's going to be covered. So how much is this going to cost companies? Well, the government, in their infinite wisdom, is claiming that this is going to cost between $240 and $255 million a year for everyone to implement. The National Retail Federation, which is on the employer side, they estimate it to be $874 million. That's a huge gap. So where do those numbers come from? Well, the Department of Labor is saying that it's going to take companies, depending on their size, between $320 to $2,700 a year to comply. The way they get that number is they've looked at how long it will take to comply. The DOL says that it is going to take employers 1 hour to actually read the rule, 1 hour per employee to implement the rule, and 5 minutes a week to comply. So that's where they're getting their numbers. This is the rule. Can you read this in 1 hour? This is 508 pages. I get paid to do this for a living, and there's no way in the world I could read this in an hour, much less read it and comprehend it well enough to comply. So that gives you an idea of how far off the government's numbers likely are. Now, in addition to the $1.7 trillion that nationwide businesses spend to comply with current regulations, this would be adding to that. As far as the chart that's right there, that chart shows why the compliance costs are as high as they are. The 1900, 1940, 1980, and present day. Each of those bars is a list of the federal labor and employment laws that existed at those times. As you can see, there are many, many more present day than there even were in 1980. Now, employers are not happy about this, this upcoming thing. It's going to cost them a lot of money, so clearly it's not good. These are just some examples of what some of the businesses across the country are saying. The businesses that have been most up in arms about this and are consequently also the ones that will be most affected are nonprofits. They are furious about this. The YMCA had a nationwide effort to fight this rule that ultimately failed. Retailers and restaurants, those are the ones that will really hit the brunt of this. But it's going to affect just one. So now, what is this new overtime rule that we've been getting? Well, here's the basics. Currently, you are required to pay overtime for any hourly workers that work over 40 hours a week. Yeah, for every hour over 40, you're supposed to pay them time and a half. Their regular hourly rate has to meet the minimum wage, which is $7.25 currently under federal law. If you've got tipped employees, so waiters, waitresses, one thing that can get you in trouble is figuring overtime incorrectly, because tipped employees, their minimum wage rate can be much lower because you can take a tip credit to offset the money that they make in tips. When you're calculating their overtime, though, you can't take that to figure out their time and a half. You can't base it off of that tipped wage, which is $2.13 an hour currently. You have to base it off of $7.25 an hour. A lot of restaurants don't do that properly. That's why a lot of them get in trouble with the DOL. In terms of salaried employees, the current rule is a salaried employee has to be paid a minimum of $23,660, which breaks down to $455 a week. In addition to meeting a salary minimum level, there are also certain job duties that you have to qualify for the salary as well. We'll go into a little bit of that also, but there's a lot of people, a lot of companies that will incorrectly believe that, oh, well, I can slap an assistant manager label on this person, but they're still doing mostly manual tasks. But I want to give them a salary, so I'm not having to pay them a lot of overtime. So I'm just going to pay them 30 grand and call them assistant manager, and that complies with the law. No, probably not. You've got to look at what they actually do. And that's also a big way that the DOL comes out. Now, the new rule that's going into effect, it is raising that minimum of $23,660 by more than double, $47,476. So if you have salaried employees that actually meet the duties requirements, come December 1st, they've got to be making at least that, or you're violating the law. There are ways, options that you have for dealing with this besides just bumping their salary to that level. And we're going to go over some of those. Some will work better for some companies than others. But that is the biggest change, and it's huge. In meeting this, you can use bonus payments, but there are rules. You can use a bonus payment to meet up to 10% of that $47,000. However, you can't do it as just one Christmas bonus that covers it. The bonus has to be paid at least quarterly. So one way you can handle it is if you're going to pay a $4,000 Christmas bonus normally, well, now you just do it $1,000 every quarter. Is probably the easiest way to do it. But that also applies to commissions, things of that nature. The government has also decided that rather than having to try to go in and change this rate every few years, they put in an automatic adjustment. That will take place every 3 years starting January 1st of 2020. There's a lot that goes into explaining that automatic adjustment, and I am not going to attempt to go through that right now, but needless to say, no one knows exactly how well that's going to play out. The government is really downplaying how much it's going to raise things every 3 years. There are some on the employer side that say it could result in the 47,000 now jumping to over 70,000 in 2020. No one knows which is closer to the truth. It's very similar to Obamacare in that respect. You know, the biggest naysayers, some of the worst truths that they pointed to haven't really come to fruition, but at the same time, Obamacare has not been the cure-all that the government said it would be by far. Again, the bonuses, this is pretty self-explanatory, but the key thing is, if you want to use that 10% credit, basically, or offset, you've got to pay it quarterly.
You skip highly compensated employees, is there anything?
No, we'll get to that later. Highly compensated employee exception is one of the least used exceptions, or exemptions. These are the exemptions from overtime pay. These are the classifications to be salary. Executive, administrative, and professional, those are the ones that we'll really go into because those are the main ones that I'll just briefly touch on the other three. Because they typically don't apply to most employees. The executive exception, this is one of the most common exceptions that's used to classify somebody as salary. This is where I'll talk about the duties that you have to have for that individual in that job. The primary duty, which means they can't just do this once in a while. They have to do it pretty regularly in their job. And one of the changes that the Department of Labor actually toyed around with was setting a specific percentage. Thankfully, they backed away from that for now, but that's probably next on their agenda if we're looking at a continued, if we're looking at a Clinton presidency. That may very well be on the agenda. So the primary duty for the executive exemption is managing an enterprise or a department of an enterprise. You must direct at least 2 full-time employees or their equivalent. And you need to have the authority to hire or fire people, or you have to have enough pull that if you suggest hiring or firing someone, that carries a lot of weight with whoever does the actual hiring and firing. Some more common examples for this are store managers, department managers, some assistant managers, but you'll have to look at the duties to be certain. HR managers, etc. For the administrative exemption, this is one where companies can get into a lot of trouble applying this one too liberally. The primary duty for the administrative exemption is they have to perform office work or non-manual work that is directly related to the management or the general business operation. Now this next one is where a lot of companies get in trouble. This person has to have the exercise of discretion and independent judgment with respect to matters of significance. So you can't say, well, this person's a high-level administrative assistant. If they're being told what to do, you know, it doesn't matter that they've been there a long time and they're making $60,000 in salary. They're still not supposed to be salaried if they're pretty much taking orders from someone else and not directing other people and not making their own independent decisions. So some examples of people that actually do fit the administrative exemption, an HR generalist typically will fall under that. Budget analyst and internal auditor are some examples. The professional exemption, this one is, I think, fairly self-explanatory. I'm not going to go into all of the duties that are up here, but it's most commonly applied to attorneys, accountants, doctors, engineers, actuaries. It's a fairly self-explanatory one, so I won't go into all of the gory details on that. The other three white-collar exemptions, computer employee. This is not your stereotypical IT guy. He's not going to fit this. All he's doing is updating you to Windows 10 and changing out your keyboard. That's not going to cut it. This is more for systems analysts, computer programmers, people that arguably could also qualify for the professional exemption because they've gotten so much training and education. Outside sales, the most common example of that is probably pharmaceutical sales. People that travel out of the office regularly to try to consummate sales, take orders, etc. And then the highly compensated employee, this is an exemption that typically is only applied to directors, officers, board members, really high up people in larger companies. Currently, to meet this exemption, those people have to make $100,000 a year, and they only have to meet one duty of any of the other exemptions. Now, the minimum they're going to have to make is $134,000. So now, what does this rule mean for those of you in this room? Some concerns that have been expressed: no overtime. If you're not paying overtime, they're not going to have to pay overtime. This isn't going to be much of an adjustment for you. Maybe. But it's definitely going to raise salaries and increase costs. Now, some of the problems along with that, outside competition might not be under the same rules. Let's say that we'll use First Cup Cafe as an example. First Cup Cafe is probably covered under the FACC, but let's just, for this example, assume they do everything locally and their sales volume is low, and so they don't have to comply. Let's just assume that. Well, as we all probably know, a couple months ago, Starbucks opened right down the street. Roughly same product, same business. You better believe Starbucks is going to be covered. And so people that are getting paid as store managers for Starbucks, suddenly getting paid $47,000, $50,000 a year because Starbucks has to comply. Well, if First Cup doesn't have to pay that much and they're trying to get by paying $35,000 a year, where do you think all the employees are going to go? That's what that means. Plaintiff's attorneys are ready to sue, and with this rule being such a dramatic change and also having so many intricacies that even well-meaning employers will likely make a mistake somewhere, you better believe they're going to sue. Salary compression. For those companies that decide, the best way to handle this is to go ahead and raise people's salaries from, say, $40,000 to the $47,000 minimum. Well, what do you think? What do you think the message is going to be to those that were one level above the $40,000 employee that were making $50,000? Hey, they got a $7,000 a year raise. Where's mine? That's salary compression. And that could be a huge problem. And then the ability to make operational changes, that's basically using independent contractors. That is one of the focuses of DOL enforcement. And that's just gonna grow with this change in the law. So how do you deal with these changes? Well, you can conduct a self-audit. This goes into some of what you would do to do a self-audit. If you have questions about self-audits, or you can contract out self-audits, you can ask our firm to help, honestly, if you feel the need to. Basically, before you can even consider what to do as far as how to deal with your employees and meeting this rule, first you've got to make sure that you're complying with all of the rules under the present day. And that's basically what this checklist is. A good example is hourly employees that will clock out for their lunch break, but then they continue to do some work at their desk while they're also having lunch. Technically, that's a violation, because under the FLSA, they are supposed to have a bona fide break away from any work. Or somebody, typically an assistant manager or a store manager, something like that, who clocks out at 5 o'clock. But, because they have responsibilities that have to get done, they continue to work off the clock for 15, 20 minutes, half hour, whatever, even if it's replying to work-related emails, things of that nature. That's technically a violation, probably. And so you want to make sure that you're following all of these rules that could also get you in trouble, in addition to preparing for the salary change. Now, once you've gone through that audit, well, now you get to pick your poison on how you're going to deal with this salary change. The easiest, from just a logistical standpoint, is, okay, I'll raise everybody to that minimum salary level that's currently set. That's going to cost money. It's simple, it's easy, but it's also expensive. Shift duties to others. What I mean by that is, let's say you have 2 salaried employees, one who is currently getting paid $60,000 a year. The other is getting paid $30,000 a year. And both of them, to get their jobs done, average about 5 hours, 10 hours of overtime a week. Well, once this new salary rule kicks in, you could convert that $30,000 person to hourly and then just pay them the overtime. Or you could take a look at the job responsibilities and say, well, wait a minute, this $60,000 salary person is perfectly capable of taking on a little bit extra work that I won't have to pay them overtime for because they're salaried. So you transfer enough work from that $30,000 person to the $60,000 person, so that $30,000 guy is able to be converted to hourly and not rack up overtime on a regular basis. And then you give those duties to the $60,000 guy who is not going to get overtime because he's salaried. Saves you money. What's that going to do for your employee morale? That's probably not going to be good, but it is an option. These others I'll go into just a little bit on the next couple of slides. Conversion to hourly. That's a pretty simple concept, and that's quite frankly, in this example, supervisor is getting paid $500 a week. Currently, as long as his duties meet the duties requirements, that's a legal salary level. Come December, that's not going to be. So you decide, okay, I'm going to convert this guy to an hourly. So you figure $500 divided by a 40-hour work week, his regular rate of pay is going to be $12.50 an hour. And this chart shows how much overtime he would rack up for 5 hours, 10 hours, 15 hours over. So that gives you an idea of how much it's going to cost. If you convert him to hourly, you can see 15 hours of overtime in a week, that's going to add $281.25 to him. So you're paying him $781.25. That's still less than if you bumped him all the way up to $913. So who will this work best for? If you've got salaried employees that are making $30,000, $35,000 or less right now, this may very well be your best option in terms of saving money or reducing how much extra you're going to have to pay out. The problem you could run into is employee morale. You tell most employees, hey, I'm going to move you from salary to hourly. They're going to view that as a demotion because it just comes with salary, comes with stats. Salary typically comes with benefits that hourly employees don't always get. Before I became an attorney, I worked in the television business for 7 years. Much of that time I worked as a television news broadcast director. So whenever you're watching the local news, I was the guy hitting all the buttons behind the scenes that put the news on the air. That was a salaried position. And my company was owned by Disney. So part of the benefits of being salaried was I got a Disney Silver Pass. I could go to any Disney property anytime I wanted. Me and 4 other people. Absolutely free. I could stay at any of the Disney resorts. 50% off.
You would quit your job? Be an attorney?
So that was one of the perks of being salaried. I didn't have that when I was hourly. So if I had been bumped back to hourly, which they would have to do under this new rule because my salary was only about $42 grand a year. Yeah, you better believe I would have viewed that as a demotion. Yeah, I would have been upset. And that's something a lot of employers are probably going to have to deal with if they choose this option. So there's more than just financial ramifications to this new rule. Now another option is the fluctuating work week. And this is an interesting option that could actually work for employers that have currently salaried employees who consistently work 5 to 10 hours of overtime. The way that this works is you enter into an agreement, usually a written agreement, with an employee that you are going to get a fixed salary, or a fixed pay every week, regardless of how many hours you work. Whether you work 30, 35, 40, 50, your pay is going to be $500 a week. And that's going to cover your regular rate of pay, that's going to cover the overtime that you earn, that's it. It's a good deal in a lot of ways because everybody knows, hey, I'm getting $500 a week. I'm not going to be needing to, I don't have to worry about if I miss, a day. I'm still getting $500. I don't have to count on, needing to get 10 hours of overtime. So in that respect, it works fairly well. And whenever you're calculating the overtime rate, instead of it being time and a half, it's just half time. So how does this work exactly? Well, we'll use the same supervisor getting $500 a week. This is the chart we had before, if you convert it to hourly. Under fluctuating work week, to figure out what his regular rate is, you take that $500 and you divide it by the number of hours actually worked that week. So using the $500 example, if he worked 5 hours of overtime, you divide 500 by 45, you come up with $11.11. That's the hourly rate. And that's what you would base the overtime rate off of. So he's getting $11.11 for the first 40 hours, basically. And then an additional $5.56 for the 5 overtime hours. So you do that same math with 10 hours, well, 50 or $500 divided by 50 hours, $10 an hour. $500 divided by 55 hours, you get $4.55 is the overtime rate. $9.09 is the regular rate. So if you use this fluctuating work week method, if he's doing 5 hours of overtime, look at how much you're saving. Instead of paying $93.75 in overtime costs, you're paying $27.78. 10 hours, you're saving nearly $140. 15 hours, you're saving over $200 a week. Sounds like a great deal. Why wouldn't everybody do this? Well, there are a couple of issues with it. The biggest issue is you've got to keep a very close eye on that regular rate, what it calculates to. That regular rate cannot drop below the minimum wage. One of the things that the federal government, at least the current administration, I'll put it that way, and likely a Clinton administration, should that be what we're going into, one of the big things they would love to see happen is boost the minimum wage from $7.25 to $10 an hour. So let's apply that to our example up here. Well, let's just go back and take a look. This is what the hourly rate, regular rate, breaks down. $11.11. If he gets 5 hours of overtime, you're fine. $10 if he gets 10 hours of overtime, you're fine. The minute this guy works over 10 hours of overtime, you're violating the law with the fluctuating work week method. If the minimum wage becomes $10, you may as well mark that 15 in red, because that's a violation. So that's why you have to be cautious with the fluctuating work week. And that's why it doesn't work for everyone. Another reason it doesn't work for everyone is going back to something I mentioned earlier. The deductions are very, very limited. If you're paying somebody 500 hours or $500 a week for however much time they work, they miss a couple of days because they're sick, you can't dock their pay for that. They're stuck on that 500. One other option, and this is one that a lot of you may be familiar with just because we have so many oil and gas people around, is the 980 schedule. What that is basically you have 9 working days in which you work your 80 hours. The way that this works, and it's you have to make sure you run it right. You would have 4 9-hour days, 1 8-hour day, and then the next week you would have 1 day off and 4 9-hour days. Because overtime is based on a work week, as long as your work week is 40 hours, there's no overtime. The way this works is you have to split the work week, or you have to start the work week dead center of that 8-hour day. So that way you've got 4 9s, and a 4. That adds up to 40. Then 4 and 4 9s. Adds up to 40. It's complicated to make that schedule work. And the oil and gas companies can. But it's just going to take a lot of planning to make sure you do it correctly. So who is looking at what you're doing? Well, your employees are going to want to know. Plaintiff's attorneys are going to be watching to make sure you don't slip up, and the DOL. The DOL is who enforces the FLSA. What I just want to say quickly about the FLSA, it is just about the most employee-friendly statute you are going to find. In most civil litigation and most employment litigation, the burden of proving the case is on the employee. Not so with the FLSA. The FLSA, in essence, presumes that the employee is telling the truth when he says, I got cheated out of money. And the burden is on the employer to prove they were doing it right. If you don't do a very good job keeping records, you may as well settle the case right away. These final thoughts, it's pretty self-explanatory. I just, again, I'll reiterate that, you've got to know that you're following all the rules currently before you can even figure out how you're going to address them usually. And that's something that you'll have to take a hard look yourself, or if you need help in figuring that out, you can always call our office. We'd be happy to help you out. And given that, I'll open it up for questions. And Rick, if you don't mind, if you want to come up here also.
I'll take it from here.
Okay, that's fine. Any questions?
Yeah, Shannon, a minute ago you were, Elena had mentioned about the highly compensated employee. Is that the same thing, that if an employee is not making $134,000 under the new rule and they work overtime, they need to be paid overtime?
Excuse me. That is a little bit unclear, but the prevailing thought is yes.
Okay. So if you're making under $134,000 a year as a highly compensated employee, say $100,000 a year.
Yes.
And you work 60 hours a week, you're technically due 20 hours overtime.
Right. Now that's probably not gonna come back to bite most people, just because as long as they're making that level of money and they meet one of those duties instead of having to meet multiple duties, then they're probably going to qualify.
The duties seem awfully broad, you know, but,
What that means, you couldn't pay annual commission or quarterly commission.
Well, quarterly commissions, up to 10% you can count as the bonus.
So, but typically you pay annual commission based on annual results, so that really would be not convenient for company for this low amount.
It will, yeah, it could cause trouble.
So I'm not clear on commissioned employees. How does that? Yeah, so commissioned employees, I guess I'm not sure, is there any effect of this rule on?
The commissioned employees, whatever amount of their income is based off of the commission, then that can count toward the 10% bonus.
Only 10%. I mean, if majority of their salary is commission.
That is going to require some serious changes, more than likely. Yeah.
well, there are some people that are 100% commission, that are willing to work 80 hours a week in order to make ends meet.
Yeah.
But then how do you determine an overtime if an employee is 100% commission based?
Well, and the Department of Labor, what they really want to do, and have made no secret about it, is they want to make sure that basically, and they take the stance that just about everyone is an employee covered by the FLSA. They are trying to say that, this idea that someone's an independent contractor is BS. They're trying to say that, just about anybody that does work in this country for a company falls under the FLSA, falls under the employee rules. And if they work more than 40 hours a week, they should be entitled to overtime. That's basically the stance of the Department of Labor and this administration. And all of the rules that they have been generating have that as their basis. So they would highly frown upon 100% commission employees. And this is one of the ways that they are trying to combat that. And this is also one of the ways they're trying to combat the use of independent contractors by claiming that, you're not really an independent contractor.
I don't mean to hog this, but I've gone through this with the Texas Chamber of Commerce Executives meeting we had in Corpus. We had another U.S. Chamber, FLSA, came and pitched this, the lawyer, and even the lawyer was very cynical about it all coming down. It's very taxing. But one of the overriding chamber executives said that it's going to force a lot of businesses to really tighten the screws on their employees. You know how sometimes your employees are in an environment that everybody gets along, we're doing good as employee morale and things like that, but when you go, hey, we're gonna go out for lunch today, and the boss takes them out, for instance, well, that stuff's either gonna be curtailed or we're gonna leave here at this time and you're off the clock and we gotta be back at this time, and it's gonna take a lot of diligence to really, like that goofing around on Friday afternoon, those days are gone. If you're goofing around on Friday, clock out, see you later.
And that's the DOL wants to be very, very strict.
Now, my other question is, in my business with Amy, for instance, my assistant, she works Monday through Friday, and then we had the 4th of July event on 4th of July. Now, generally, any employees that work on a federal holiday get double time, okay? But I said, okay, we're gonna take off Friday a little bit really early because we got a long day tomorrow. But in this scenario, can that employee work 8 hours a day through Thursday, knowing that you're going to work 8 hours on Saturday, regardless of the federal holiday?
Well, because the calculation is based on what the employer defines as their work week, as long as you're consistently applying the work week and you fall within 40 hours within that work week, then typically that's going to be fine.
Generally,
so let's say your work week goes from
Monday through Saturday, generally, sometimes.
Yeah, Monday through, or well, it's a full 7 days. So Monday through Sunday, let's say. Well, working 8 hours a day, Monday through Thursday, and then 8 hours one more day. It's fine to do it Friday. It's fine to do it Saturday. It's fine to do it Sunday.
Okay.
As long as, and this is one thing that thankfully we don't have to worry about really here in Texas, but in a lot of other states, they calculate, they have state laws that calculate overtime on a different basis. California is notorious. In California, they calculate overtime based on daily work. So if you work more than 8 hours in one day, so like for the 980, would not work there, because each one of those days where somebody works 9 hours, they're getting 1 hour of overtime each one of those days. I actually worked briefly in California.
But in Texas, we're good.
Texas doesn't have any such laws.
So another example, so can you tell me what may happen if you have, let's say, $100,000 base salary sales manager who will earn commission $50,000 that will be paid in December or January on following week, and that sales manager is Monday in California, Thursday in New York, how we are going to keep track, because he may not comply, right, if the bonus is paid following January.
Yeah, if you're, I mean,
Commission or bonus.
yeah, the bonus rule would definitely come into play there, and you would only be able to use the bonus to offset toward 10% if it
But
is
that's
paid.
not even the case, because they would be paid quarterly. So
Exactly.
then it means the base salary, $100,000, will have to pay for
Well, you would, if the person is relying on that highly compensated, exemption, and they're getting paid $100,000 bonus salary, or $100,000 base pay, and then the only bonus or commission or what have you that they're getting is that $50,000 one time, or even 2 times, that's not going to count to be able to apply it. So in the DOL's eyes, that person's only making $100,000 for purposes of this rule, or complying to this rule. And so in that situation, if they fall under one of those other white collar exemptions, if you can say that they fall under the executive exemption or the outside sales exemption, well then that $100,000 is perfectly fine. I mean, that's double the 47. But if they don't fit any of those other exemptions, so you are having to rely on that highly compensated, then that $100,000 is not gonna do it. You're gonna have to get them up to 134 somehow. And it's gonna have to be within those other rules. So a $50,000 annual bonus is not gonna cut it.
Shannon, there's not a dollar limit on the outside sales. They don't have to satisfy the salary level for outside sales. So it doesn't matter what you take.
Okay. Oh, that's right, because it's an exemption.
Well, Shannon, I just want to say it's that hour's up, and I don't know if Shannon wants to stick around and
I'll be happy
answer
to
a
stick
couple of questions. You guys are more than welcome to stay here and ask as long as Shannon's willing to be here. Like the old adage is, hello, I'm from the government, and I'm here to help. You know,
Rick, you've used that one with me a few times.
you know, and it just seems the more and more they want to help, the more confusing it tends to be. But we're fortunate to have guys like Shannon in our chamber and a lot of other people in our chamber that really are here to help. And I'm sure Shannon's office is willing to talk to you anytime to straighten out your specific situation. Am I correct?
Yeah, you can
And,
give me a call directly.
give them a call. And we really want to thank you for doing this and spread the word. It's a very important topic. It's going to impact a lot of people that have their head in the sand right now. And when December 1st gets here, some employees got wind of this. And they're going to say, hey, you know, it's Christmas. You know, and so we just try to spread the word. But thank you very much, Shannon. Appreciate it. And God bless everybody. We're just going to cut the video at this point, and then y'all can stand up, talk, whatever you like. But thank you guys for being here. There's extra pizza if somebody wants to take